Um, in this video I will try to make an introspection and to think honestly, or at least partly with honesty, about my psyche or my soul, the soul of my empirical self. And those who have followed my videos know that I often talk about my higher self, which I know is the real self, the cosmic self, or the absolute ego which lives in every human being. And my empirical self, which is the individual that you see with his own personal history and flaws and wickedness and character or lack of character, I don't know. And in the philosophy of Hegel, what he calls the negative, which is a principle of evil, which is detached from the divine substance. All things are one, but the negative is the moment of separation from the unity of all things. And he says that the empirical aspect of this individual that he calls the negative, and which becomes reason, are completely irrelevant, and that what is true in reason is the purely rational discourse. In this sense, I am a dualistic being, because when I speak the truth through logical categories, this truth is the same for every thinking creature. But as an empirical individual, I am tainted by my own biases and my own passions and my own wickedness. So if I were purely rational, I would speak Hegel's logic without adding anything personal to it, but I cannot reach this state of logical perfection without being tainted by my empirical self. And Hegel says that consciousness knows only what is within its own experience. So, in terms of psychology, which is the discourse of the soul, the psyche, I cannot know another soul than my own soul, my own psyche. I can read books about psychology, Aristotle's books. Hegel said that they were valuable. I can read Hegel's view on psychology. I can read the books on metaphysics about what the soul is. But this purely metaphysical rationalist view is probably true. But the soul is not a purely rational entity. It is plunged into a body, and I can know my own soul and my own experience of the world only by thinking about it. So I don't know yet what is the relationship between my higher self and my lower self, but what I know is that I cannot yet think about my higher self without being tainted and mixed and corrupted by my lower self. And the self-inquiry about the characteristics of the psyche of my lower self is what may enable me to access my higher self. So in this video I will speak about my own psychology as an empirical individual, how I think of myself with my own personal empirical experience. It begins with the relationship with my father. I have two memories of my father, my empirical father. One in which I caused shame to my father because the details are not important, but I had embarrassed my father. This is the first memory of my consciousness. And the second was a conflict between my parents, and I felt anxiety. I was in the middle, and I felt unconsciously that I was the cause of the conflicts between my parents. And these are the two memories that I have of my father: shame and anxiety. So one could say that as an empirical individual, I started my conscious life with a negative relationship with my father. And the love that I felt for my father, and I guess that every human loves his father partly, or some don't, but we are programmed to have probably an attachment to one's father, or at least an interest in seeking to know him. I felt love for my father through a lack. It is the absence of my father which made me love him. So it is through suffering that I experience love. And this psychological aspect would play a very important role in the development of my empirical self. I loved my father because I missed my father. From an empirical point of view, what are my characteristics, or what have been my characteristics in my youth and teenage years? I would say that as an empirical individual, from an external aspect, I am kind, nice, I'm a nice person, but I'm also flat and dull and boring and uninteresting. And I hate conflicts in my empirical life. I try to avoid conflicts and confrontation, which makes me weak. In my younger years, I was never consciously evil, but all the evils that I produced was coming from a lack of character. There were many situations in which I knew what the good thing was, the moral thing to do was, but I lacked the strength and the character to do what is good. So I was evil by lack of strength. I did not do evil consciously, but it was my lack of character and my lack of inner strength which made me which prevented me from doing good things. And the absence of good, because good and evil are in a logical relationship with one another, the absence of good is evil. So I believed that the reason why I was evil in the sense of not being good and not being strong enough to prevent evil from ascertaining itself was because I had lacked a father who would have taught me to man up and to be strong. And so I blamed my own evil on the absence of my father. Also, as an empirical individual, in my younger years and teenage years, I was very shy, but I have this psychological faculty of being able to open up, and when I feel confident, I can make jokes and be, I wouldn't say comical, but I'm very introvert, and I do not easily open up, but when I do, I become comical. I guess that from an empirical point of view, in my younger years and teenage years, I was appreciated by the people that I was in relationship to. I not admired, but they liked me, I guess. A very profound psychological characteristic of mine is that when I get interested into a topic, I invest myself fully. I am, in this sense, I am a totalitarian being, in the sense that whenever I get interested in something, I need to be fully interested in it, not just one aspect, but the totality. And it's a recurring psychological process in my empirical life. I will not give the examples, but whenever I was invested in something, I devoted myself fully to the project. I can, from an empirical standpoint, I have an ability which is not very praiseworthy of having a cold detachment. It's a recurring feature in my psychological life as an empirical individual. I am capable of abandoning others, not to hurt them consciously, but to move on and to be indifferent. I can leave people that I love suddenly and become indifferent. That's very strange. I have this faculty of becoming indifferent to the people that I love, not to become indifferent to those that I don't like, but to suddenly move on and become completely irrelevant, which is kind of evil also, because in my teenage years, when I was 13 or 14, I suffered from a feeling of a lack of masculinity, and this is a recurring feature throughout all my life. I suffer from lacking in masculinity. I have a very, very serious problem with my sense of being a man. And I remember when I was 14 or 13 maybe, I watched a TV show in which there was a homosexual who grew up fatherless. And I was very anxious because I believed, I don't know where I got this idea, but I believed that boys who grow up without a father have a stronger tendency of becoming homosexuals. So I had a period of anxiety and depression where I thought, will I become a homosexual? That was an idea which I rejected. I had never been attracted to males. I was heterosexual. At 13 years old, you're not heterosexual, but I was attracted by females, by girls, in kind romantic stories. I had never had any relationship, but I felt a sweetheart, kind of. It's not love, it's sweetheart attraction, I guess, for many girls throughout all my life. So I had always been an heterosexual, but this idea that if you don't have a father in your childhood, you are kind of determined to become homosexual, this idea scared me, and I was very anxious, and I had serious psychological problems for many months. It was when I was 13 years old, I think. This idea was really scary to me, that yeah. I also realized many years later, it was in 2018, I realized that all the girls and women that I have loved or been attracted to, they were always the same, in the sense that it was always the same idea that I loved, and the kind of women that I am attracted to, well, they are European, but not necessarily, but from an empirical point of view, I have always been attracted by only European women. They are funny. That's very important. In order to fall in love with a girl, I need her to have a good sense of humor. A girl, a woman without a sense of humor, that's not my kind of, I need them to be kind, but also a little bit twisted. And what I love the most, from an empirical standpoint, about a woman is a woman who is strong in character and in appearance, not physical, not physical appearance, in psychological appearance, I I fall in love with the same girl every time, because what I need from an empirical standpoint from a girl is to have um, psychological, not physical, psychological masculine features, namely to be funny, to have character, and to be strong, because it forces me unconsciously to man up. When a woman is funny, there's a part of me deep in my psyche who says to myself, I cannot allow a woman to be more comical than I am, because humor is a masculine feature. I have to be funnier than her. And the same goes for character. When a woman is strong in character, I say to myself, I cannot allow a woman to be stronger than me, because I'm a male, so I need to be even stronger. So there's this, for me, the perfect woman, which is the woman that I have always loved in, from an empirical point of view, I've fallen in love, one might say. When you are a kid, you do not fall in love, but the sweetheart relationship that I've had with many women, I don't know, I've been attracted to maybe a dozen women, but there's only one from an empirical standpoint that I have really loved. But anyway, they are, I would say, 75% feminine and 25% masculine, and it creates in me unconsciously the will to man up and to assert my own masculinity. So yeah, there's this idea that I need to be psychologically balanced, to be funnier and stronger than the women I love. So they create in me a tendency to become more masculine, and that's what yeah. And also the most enjoyable aspect in women, from my own empirical experience, is to discover the melting heart of a woman behind her apparent strength of character. So the idea that some women appear strong and funny on the outside, but when you penetrate into their psyche, they are the most feminine women. So there's this dialectical relationship, in the sense that a psychologically masculine woman, which is humor and character and strength, is usually the most feminine on the inside. And my highest joy from an empirical standpoint is to discover the hidden sweetness within a psychologically masculine women, in a way. So yeah. Also, one of my empirical characteristics from a psychological point of view, I lack confidence in myself, and I believe that I am worthless. But every time that someone tells me that I am not worthless, that I have value in me and worth, I tend to become psychologically inflated and very arrogant. So I have this roller coaster ride in my psyche that I think that I am worthless, and every time someone tells me that I have value, it creates a tendency to overestimate myself, and I become arrogant. So I am never balanced. I'm always too arrogant or too worthless. I can't find the proper value. So I have this double tendency of being extremely arrogant and having a sense of worthlessness within me. So I oscillate between the two, and yeah. Also, when I was 17 years old, I had skin problems, which ruined my physical appearance, and I decided to isolate myself, because I found myself ugly and repulsive, and I did not want to live in the social world anymore. So because I found myself ugly, and there's a part of me who believes that, which is not the best part, but a part of me believes that ugly people should not exist. And when I found myself physically ugly, I retired from the world because I believed that I was too ugly to go into the world, and that I was an embarrassment and I was a shame, and I was so I yeah um, yeah, I retired from 17 years old to 26 years old. So between 2009 and 2019, I lived completely isolated. I had no social life, no friends. I almost never got out, never went to buying anything. I had no social life, no friends, no external relationship. I lived almost all on my own because I was so embarrassed and ashamed of my of my ugliness. And I looked at myself in the mirror uh, every day. So I found myself repulsive, but at the same time I kept looking at myself. So I was narcissistic. I'm a narcissist. Yeah. I was unstable, anxious, incapable of sustained activity. Every time I started a project and a will to do something with my life, every time that something went wrong, I lost my confidence and I became depressed, and I oscillated between ups and downs. I never found psychological balance. Um, I was afraid of being rejected. That's my greatest fear, to be rejected. Um, in 2013, after 4 years of worthless existence, I realized that I was wasting my life, and I had the thought that people of my age are enjoying themselves. They have a normal life, friends, they go to parties, they have a job, they have sex, they have a normal life, and I don't. But I realized that that was not the most important. I could do without having a modern, hedonistic Western life, but what I truly wanted was a degree, a diploma. I wanted social recognition, and I realized in 2013 that I had wasted my intellectual potential, and that I felt so stupid and worthless and degraded, and I wanted a diploma. All of a sudden I said to myself, I need to have social recognition. I need to achieve something to prove my worth to myself and to others. And also, 2013 is the moment when I started to read a lot. I had never read books before that, and I became a nerd, a book nerd. Is that an English word? A library rat. In French, we say someone who spends his entire life reading books in his library. So I started to discover leftism and communism, and in my psyche, capitalism created exclusion, and I was excluded from society. So I identified with communism because communism was inclusion and acceptance. So I adopted radical political views, in this case communism, out of personal psychological problems. There was no relationship between the fact that capitalism creates economic inequalities and exclusion and my own personal life, in which I was self-excluded. It was my own weakness which had made me live alone and reject the external world. So I tended already to project my own psychological suffering onto political ideologies. And I would, many years later, it would happen with right-wing politics, and I will explain that. In the year 2015 and 16, there were these terrorist attacks in Europe and in France especially. And I did not watch the news back then. I was quite indifferent. But I was very psychologically twisted because I had read far left Marxist books which said that capitalism creates insanity and that acts of violence are a byproduct of the inequalities of capitalism and so on. So I felt more compassion for the perpetrators of the attacks than for the victims, because I had this insane leftist worldview where the perpetrator is the victim of society and the victim is the perpetrator of social oppression. So I had a crazy, nonsensical leftist worldview, and I was projecting my own suffering as an individual onto the perpetrators of violent acts. So my own psychology was translated into political conflicts. And so I was a monster already, because, yeah. Then I wrote that I would discover many years later through my intellectual journey that I love Europe, and I kind of hate Europe in a sense, because Europe is everything that I love, but at the same time, my vision of Europe is so great that it constantly reminds me of my own mediocrity. And I kind of hate Europe for reminding me how mediocre and worthless I am. Also, in my intellectual development as an empirical individual, I became familiar with the history of Europe and the Jews, but almost completely indifferent to the rest of the world. I am ignorant when it comes to the history of Asia and Africa and South America. I only know vaguely about these continents and these populations through the mediation of their relationship to Europe and the Jews. So, yeah. Also, from a psychological standpoint, I know that I have a serious problem with the idea of Germany, because as an empirical individual, I wish that I were a German, and I live next to the German borders in a region which is historically German, and the people in my social surroundings, in my childhood, in my teenage years, they were French from a citizen point of view, but of Germanic descent. And in my family, there are people who look like Germans. I don't, but yeah. So a part of me wishes to be a German, and a part of me that I cannot deny is that I want, as an empirical individual, I wish that Germany was feared and admired and respected and loved. And yeah, I have a serious problem with the idea of Germany. And yeah. Also, I have a problem with women, because as an empirical individual in my everyday life, I am boring and dull and, I would say, kind. But I hate the idea that women like me because I'm nice. I don't want to be the nice guys, which is not a good thing to say, but a part of me knows that when women are friendly with a man and find him nice, secretly they despise him. Women do not want to be how should I explain it? If you're the nice guy in the eyes of a woman, there's a problem, because women, they like nice guys as friends, but as sexual partners, they like strong men. And yeah, also a part of me, as a man, and I'm talking here about my psychological, empirical character, a part of me as a man, one of my desires is to be admired by women. I don't want to be that's pathetic, but I wish that I were admired by at least some women, or one woman, or at least. And I know this is pathetic, but it is part of the masculine psyche. Men do not want to be they don't want to be the nice guy. They want to be admired. This is pathetic, but I must be true to myself. Also, from a psychological standpoint, I fear pain. I don't like pain. But at the same time, the only achievement that I am proud of in my empirical life is to have experienced pain and to have been able to overcome the pain. It was painful, but I have overcome this painful moment, and this is the only source of pride as of now that I have as an empirical individual. So I am a masochist. As an empirical individual, I am a masochist. I don't want to experience pain, but at the same time, I want to, because it gives me a sense of self-worth. So I am in a schizophrenic relationship with myself, and I am partly insane. And one last remark. In my intellectual development, most, if not all, the men that I have admired, I made a video in this channel with the list of all the men that I have admired, they are all psychopaths. So I have this contradiction within myself that as an exterior empirical individual, I'm dull and boring and even nice, but within me, in my mind, I am partly a psychopath, and I hate being a psychopath, but I am also compassionate, but yeah. So yeah, that's what in the broad outline I could say about my empirical psyche from my own perspective. And one is never capable of knowing oneself fully, but yeah, so that's what I had to say. And yeah.